I was in, I think, an electronics shop, purchasing a transistor radio. As is the way these days, both in the brochure and the assistant congratulated me for doing this. This, of course, was ridiculous. It wasn't my birthday, I wasn't getting married, there was nothing to be congratulated about. In the case of you purchasing this video, it's an entirely different matter. You are to be congratulated because you have decided to make that step to learn an instrument. And it might possibly, as it did in my case, entirely change your life. Learning to play an instrument is hard work. If anybody tells you any different, they're wrong. However, it's also one of the most exciting and rewarding and fun things that you could ever do. Whether you want to play an instrument for your own amusement, just to play it to friends perhaps, or impress people at parties, or maybe become one of the great exponents of all time. Any of these things are now within your grasp, but you have to have a good grasp of basics. That's the basics. And that's what this video sets out to teach you. It assumes that you have no knowledge of the instrument whatsoever and are starting entirely from scratch. If you follow this video through step by step, by the time you come to the end, you will have a good working knowledge of the instrument, enabling you to decide what type or style of music you wish to play. Of course, there is no substitute for practice, that's the big key to it, and even just as soon as you get to grips with whatever instrument it is, just one note I always found when I started to play, just by getting some sort of a rhythm on one note, gets you the feel of the instrument. And then just adding something else as a simple harmony. It's such a pleasure. Start by playing the video all the way through. It will give you a good idea of the journey, that's the musical journey that you are embarking upon, and the structure of the course. You will notice the program is in sections which you can easily find. Try to complete a section and don't move on until you feel comfortable and ready. When the tutor demonstrates a piece or section, try playing along until you're happy with the way that you sound. Keep practicing. That's the essence of learning any instrument. The beauty of this way of learning is that you are in control and you can choose the time and speed at which you learn. So we have chosen one of the best around to teach you. Accomplished saxophonist Pete Thomas has toured with Rod Argent, Bill Haley, Fats Domino, Joe Jackson and Richard Thompson. He's recorded with the likes of Gary Glitter, Elton John, Cliff Richard and Kim Wilde.
In this course, I'd like to show you some of what I have found useful in playing the alto saxophone. The saxophone is probably the most versatile of any acoustic instrument. You may want to play it like this. Or you may want to play it like this. Or maybe you want to play it like this. Or you could want to play it like this. There's no one correct way to play. If I say to you something like, this is the proper way to play, what I really mean to say is, this is the way I've found useful for me and the way that I play. Most of my playing has been in the fields of rock and roll, blues and pop music, but I always try to be versatile. Learn bits of other styles like jazz, classical music, calypso, country and western. Put it all together. Come up with what's probably most important of all, your own style. Let the instrument become your voice. When you first get your saxophone, you'll find it comes in bits. There are three main bits. This is the body. This is the neck or crook. And probably most important of all is this, the mouthpiece. We can make a sound on this by itself, which we can't do with the rest of the saxophone. Now, the way the sound is made is quite scientific to explain, but the easiest way of imagining it is, you may remember when you were young playing around with bits of grass and making a sound with them, putting it between your thumbs. Well, it's a very similar principle. We're blowing air across the grass or the reed. In the case of the saxophone, it's vibrating and making sound. Now, the mouthpiece may or may not come with a reed already on it. Whether it does or not, I'll show you how to put the reed onto the mouthpiece. This is the mouthpiece itself. This is called the ligature, which basically is a little metal thing which clamps the reed onto the mouthpiece and the reed itself. Now, reeds are very fragile. You can very easily break the end of this reed. It tapers to a point. You can break this by brushing against it with your sleeve, so be careful. You'll see the reed has a flat side and a curved side. The mouthpiece has a flat bit there, which is called the table. The reed goes against this, up onto it, with the curved part of the reed corresponding to this curved part at the top of the mouthpiece. Now if you line it up so the reed is central on the table of the mouthpiece, the tip of the reed, when looked at it straight on like that, should come exactly to the tip of the mouthpiece. Now very carefully put the ligature over the top like that and tighten the screws. Now don't tighten them too tight or you will distort the reed. Just tight enough so that the reed won't move. Some ligatures, the screws are on the other side. It doesn't really matter, it doesn't make any difference. There are various different mechanisms. Some have a screw, one single screw coming down from the top. They all do the same thing. Right, the next thing to do is to put the mouthpiece onto the neck. There's a piece of cork here on the neck and the mouthpiece fits on there. Now this should be quite a tight fit because it has to be airtight. If it's too hard to push on, you can use cork grease, which you can buy. It comes in a little lipstick shaped thing like this. Let's put a bit on the cork there and that'll make it easier for the mouthpiece to push on. Now for now we needn't worry exactly where it goes. The position of the mouthpiece will eventually determine whether the saxophone is in tune or not, but obviously until we've played a note we don't know where the tuning position is. So for now just push it on until you can feel a bit of resistance but without having to push too hard. Next we put the neck here into the top end of the body. Now line it up at the back so that this little bit of mechanism here, which is protruding at the top of the body, as you can see there when I take the neck off, is connecting to this part of the neck. That should be lined up in the middle of this curved shaped bit there. When that's there, tighten the screw. Once again, you don't have to tighten it too tight or you could damage the instrument. And there we have the assembled saxophone. One other very important part of the saxophone is the strap, or sometimes known as the sling, because this is supporting the saxophone. Especially in the case of the alto. If you've got a soprano, it'll probably be a straight soprano and it doesn't need a strap, but the alto does. There, put the strap on the saxophone, and then we're now ready to think about how to hold it. This is how to hold the saxophone when you're playing it. Now, firstly, the lower end of the saxophone at the back, you'll see a little bit of metal, or it could be plastic sticking out there like that. You put your right thumb underneath that. Above that, the top end of the saxophone will be a button that you put your left thumb on. This button doesn't actually do anything at all, it's just somewhere to rest the thumb. There's a key just above it. For now, ignore that, we don't want to press that key, we just put the thumb on that button. One very important thing now is to adjust the neck strap so that the mouthpiece goes to the right place. If it's too low, it will go into your neck, no use at all. If it's too high, poke your eye out and probably break the reed and your glasses. We adjust it so that the mouthpiece will fit comfortably into your mouth. Just the very tip of the mouthpiece needs to go into the centre of your mouth. It's very important that the strap is taking the weight of the saxophone rather than your hands, because after a while, if your hands are holding it like that, you're going to get very tired muscles here and you won't be able to play properly. With the mouthpiece ready to go into your mouth, we should hold the saxophone either to the right of the body or in front of it like that. There's no real rules about that, because if you're performing you might want to be posing and play like that or like that. But for now we want to keep a straight back, stand comfortably, which will help us breathe properly. We could be sitting, in which case you'll find it's easiest with the saxophone to the right of the body. It's rather awkward having it in front like that when you're sitting. Before we actually blow the note, there's quite a complex thing going to be going on in your mouth, and the best way of describing this is to say, think of your lower lip like a cushion, which is going to go over the bottom teeth, curl it over the teeth, and with your top teeth, imagine you're very slightly biting onto the top of the mouthpiece, about 1 centimetre in from the edge. So the bottom lip slightly curled over the bottom teeth will be pressing against the reed top teeth on the top of the mouthpiece. Then with your tongue, tip of your tongue against the tip of the reed, we're going to blow. Now with the tip of your tongue on the reed, nothing's going to happen because you're blocking it off. But as soon as you move your tongue back off the reed, air will pass through this gap between the reed and the mouthpiece. The reed will vibrate and we should hear a note. When you want to finish playing the note, don't just take the mouthpiece out of your mouth. It might have looked like that's what I did, but in fact I put my tongue back onto the edge of the reed, which stops the sound. Right, I'm going to show you how to play a few notes on the saxophone now. As I'm sitting down again, I shall be holding the saxophone to the right of my body. Now, the basic principle behind playing different notes on the saxophone is all the way down we have lots of holes in the saxophone which are open and closed by the use of keys. This is effectively changing the length of the tube of the instrument that is actually working. So as we press more keys down, we're making the tube longer and we get a lower note. The first note I'm going to show you is the note B. Now you'll find all these keys on the saxophone look very complicated, but we don't have to really do too much messing around with our hands. There are 3 buttons at the bottom which the right hand fingers will be going on, and 3 buttons at the top which the left hand fingers will be playing. Now to make things a little bit more complicated, there are actually more than 3. There's a little button there in the middle which we can ignore for now, and just above these 3 there is an extra one which might be difficult to see on this saxophone because instead of being mother of pearl like the rest, it's brass, but on a lot of saxophones this would look like another mother of pearl key. So if we count these 3 up from the bottom, 1, 2, ignore the little one, then the third one up is the one we want to press now. This is the B key. The first finger of the left hand will be playing this key. Now you don't have to press too hard at all, just as long as the pad closes. If you really force down on it, you'll be wasting an awful lot of energy and it'll slow your playing down. So remember how we were holding the saxophone before? The right thumb underneath the thumb guard there, the left thumb on the button at the back. Now this finger on that first button and mouthpiece in the mouth, tongue on the reed, say the syllable T and blow. Now I just like to remind you about what we were doing with the mouth. Top teeth were on the top of the mouthpiece, and the lip was cushioning the bottom teeth, but actually applying a little bit of pressure there. Now if you weren't able to get a note then, there could be several reasons. You may have been blowing too hard or pushing too much with your jaw, which would be completely closing the reed against the mouthpiece and no air could get in. Or else maybe you weren't pressing hard enough and the reed wasn't vibrating. It could be that you haven't got a very good reed. Now this unfortunately is a problem with saxophones. You never know whether you're getting a good reed or a bad reed. You can sometimes tell by looking at it. If it looks fairly symmetrical, it could be a good reed. If it looks warped or twisted, it's probably a bad reed and won't work. Best to buy several reeds at one time, then you can try them out. And a good tip is to soak them first before playing them. You can dip them in a glass of water for a minute or two, or just soak it in your mouth. One possible problem, if you bought a second-hand saxophone, is the mouthpiece may be totally unsuitable for learning on, which could mean that it would be much too difficult to play if the gap between the reed and the mouthpiece is too big. Another thing that could be wrong is the saxophone itself may need overhauling or repairing. The only way of you really knowing this is to take it to a good repairer, and they should tell you. Right, we'll just try playing that note again. This time I want you to, while you're playing it, concentrate on the note. That is, listen to it. The reason for this is I want you to think of this not as a purely mechanical process, but we're actually now playing music. Even though there's only one note, we want to think about that note as something beautiful. The only way you're ever going to get a beautiful sound, or a nasty sound if you want to get a nasty sound, whatever it is you want to get out of the saxophone, you've got to listen to it to end up getting the sound you want to get. So this time, play the note and concentrate on what you're hearing. Remember the tongue. Now, the best way of practicing your tone is to just play long notes, which is what we just did. And to me, this is always the most important part of any practice. If I don't get much time to practice, then at least I'll practice some long notes, because I think this is so important, I can't say it enough. The sound of the saxophone, to me, is the most important part of it. Anyway, there's your note B. We'll go on to playing a few more notes now. The next note, as we'll go down the instrument, is the note A. Now to play the A, keeping the first finger on the B key, ignore the little button for now, and the next one down, we put the second finger of the left hand on there. Once again, don't press too hard, there's no need to. And this is the note A. One more note while we're thinking about the left hand is the note G. The third finger of the left hand on the next button down. There we have the first three notes of the saxophone that I'm going to teach you: B, A, and G. In this next section, we're going to look at breathing and articulation. I don't recommend that you play the saxophone with someone standing on your stomach. What I want to show you in this lesson is the importance, though, of the stomach muscles to breathing. Now, normally when we breathe, we don't think about it at all. It's something that comes naturally. But most people don't breathe using the lower part of their lungs or the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm is a part of your body between the lungs and the abdomen, and it's controlled by the muscles surrounding it. You can feel these muscles in our stomach. The reason we want to breathe like this is because playing a woodwind instrument, we don't necessarily need a lot of air. What we need is to be able to control it, and this way of breathing gives us a lot of control. Now, a good way of thinking of this, instead of thinking you're breathing into your lungs, think that you're breathing into your stomach. Now here's an exercise you can do to practice diaphragm breathing. Place your hands on your stomach, fingers together. Now what we're going to do, as we breathe in, our stomach will be moving out. You can try and tense the muscles, if you like, to force the stomach out. As the stomach moves out and you breathe in, your fingers will separate. As you breathe out, your stomach will go in and your fingers will go together. Again. As you breathe in, stomach goes out, fingers separate. Breathe out, stomach goes in, fingers together. This is something you can practice whenever you like, whenever you have 5 minutes break, coffee break, go off and practice diaphragm breathing. We're now going to look at tonguing, which I mentioned when we were producing the first note on the saxophone. Tonguing is very important. If you've ever heard a horn section that playing really tightly, that's because all the players are using their tongues at the same time together in a very precise way. Tonguing is also important because it allows you to start the note with a good strong sound. Instead of it just coming in weakly, if we start the note with our tongue, it means the gap between the reed and the mouthpiece is blocked off. We can build pressure up in our lungs using the diaphragm, take the tongue off the reed, and immediately the note starts nice and strong. It's like opening a tap hard. Eventually we will want to be able to tongue quickly, slowly. A good way of practicing this, even if you haven't got the saxophone, you can walk down the street going ta 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 or ta 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 if you like. Think of any rhythms, use this syllable ta. It's a very good practice. In this next exercise, we're going to combine breathing, articulation, and rhythm. I want you to tap your foot and at the same time mentally count 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. We're going to play the note B on the count of 1. While still counting, we hold this note for 4 counts and stop on the next count of 1. We're still counting, but during the next counts, we don't play at all. If you want to breathe, that's the time to breathe. If you don't need to breathe, you don't need to. Remember your tonguing and diaphragm at the same time. Try and keep your foot tapping regularly. If you want, you can use a metronome or a drum machine. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. In musical terms, each of these counts, the 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., is called a beat. Beats are grouped into bars. In this case, there were 4 beats in each bar. Remember we went 1, 2, 3, 4 and then started again. So we call this 4/4. The notes we played, we call a whole note, or a semi-breve. We're now going to do notes half the length. We call these half notes, or minims. There are 2 minims to each bar of 4/4. Each note lasts 2 beats. So what we're going to do, we're mentally counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, etc. But this time we start the first note on 1 as before. The second note we start on the count of 3. We stop again on 1 of the next bar, rest for a bar, and then start again with the next bar, 2 notes to the bar this time. In musical notation it looks like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Breathe if you need to.